Hello and welcome to the Be Glad movement. My name's Pollyanna and I'm on a mission to bring you as many stories as possible of good coming out of bad and reasons to be glad. And this evening I've got a slightly different story for you. I'm joined by Val and the story is about a dragon. So Val, tell us about this story, because it's not really about you, it's about a story that you've written of good coming out of bad. So I'm just going to hand over and let you tell us all about it.
Thank you, Polly. So the story is called Jasper the Firefighting Dragon. I'll give you a little look.
Wow.
So you know what I am going to be speaking about. This story is not real. You possibly may have been able to work it out. Pure fiction, and it was my daughter's bedtime story. So, like many parents, I make up stories to tell my children, and it's often about things that she's interested in. So she might ask me for a story about we watched Charlotte's Web and she suddenly wanted a story about spiders and pigs. We've gone to the beach, she'll want something about the sea.
Sure.
So one we were having our bedtime story and she announced that she wanted a bedtime story about a dragon. Fine, not a problem. A dragon and a fire engine.
Oh.
My response was, okay. I really wanted the main character in the book, or in the story as it was then, to be the goodie. Right. And the obvious thing is you think dragons, fire engine. So I didn't really want this dragon to start lots of fires that the fire engine had to put out. So the only way around that was to make it a water-breathing dragon engine. So that was the basis where we started from, and I had to create a bit of a story. So I decided that he was the only water-breathing dragon in a place with fire-breathing dragons, and it had to be a town where people and dragons lived together because the people would drive the fire engine. So this is where it all sort of started, and I came up with, cobbled something together for this bedtime, but it really took my daughter's imagination and really sparked it. So she kept on asking for it again and again. And you know how children sort of get stuck on something. She's 2 at this point.
Right.
So over the next couple of weeks, the story got refined until we eventually had Jasper the Firefighting Dragon. She then asked me for pictures.
Right.
Which so I sort of forgot about it a little bit, and she kept on asking, and I kept on not providing them because I really cannot draw at all. And of course, then her interest moved to other stories as well, and we kind of sort of forgot about it a little bit, to be honest. I put it away.
Right.
But she did occasionally still ask for the dragon story, the dragon and the fire engine story. And occasionally, when we read it, would ask me again for pictures. So after a while, I started doing a little bit of research. Is there like a printing company where I can upload some JPEGs or get some like clip art to put together and get out? I tried stapling together some A4 paper and wrote the story out on all of the different pages, and then tried to think of pictures, and just like it didn't. Still have that way in the drawer, this non-drawn bit of A4 paper. It's the first attempt in the book. It just it wasn't working. So I did some research into getting a children's story published and went on lots of forums and that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the general feedback that I got from lots of people, from publishing companies, from other parents, from self-published, from established, well-known authors, the general feedback is, if you are doing this for someone special to you, for your own child, do it yourself.
Okay.
It is, if you want to be able to hand your book to a child, just do it yourself. If you don't have a time limit, then by all means, go down and try and get it published by a company. But first, you can't just send your manuscripts to a publishing company anymore. They don't accept unsolicited manuscript. I did find out there are a few that do, and I found out they're called vanity companies. Vanity companies basically will charge you thousands of pounds for the privilege of publishing your work for you, just so that you can say that you are published.
Wow, okay.
Again, loads of forums, steer clear. And I didn't know this. I wrote to them. I got glossy contracts, pretty contracts came through my post saying they wanted to publish my book. But I had to pay them thousands of pounds to do it.
Oh, not a viable option.
But the main feedback people said was, just to be sure, put it away for a few months, forget about it, then get it back out again, give it a read. If you still think it's good, then pursue it. So that's what I did. I sort of put it away in summer, and then at Christmas I got it back out again, read it to Elizabeth. Mummy, can I have the stories, please? Excuse me. Because it's like, okay. So that's when I started researching an illustrator. I figured if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it properly, because if I'm going to actually go to a bit of effort, I want it to be something that I can be proud of at the end of it. So I researched illustrators online, literally just typed it into Google, and found an illustrator that I really liked. So I got in contact with her and said, how do I go about doing this? And she helped me enormously. So that is Sarah-Leigh, who is the illustrator for the book. She's very sought after, so I had to wait several months for my turn. But I didn't mind that, because that sort of told me that she was good.
Sure.
And it was only meant to be a private thing. I'd get maybe 10 copies printed, something like that, for friends and family.
Yeah.
But that was what it was meant to be. It was meant to be private. She told me that it was good enough to publish. I sent it to some printing companies and had it proofread. And again, they all told me it was actually good enough to get published, which, these people weren't related to me. But they were all vying for my business as well. So could we really trust them? Anyway, they said, if you go for a print-on-demand company, then you don't have to invest in thousands of copies. And if you sell some, you sell some. If you don't sell any, you weren't planning on selling any anyway. So what have you lost?
Sure.
So that's how it got published, that I decided to do it myself. So I got my copy and I gave it to my daughter. And it, whilst we were going through the whole illustrating and layout and getting it all set up period, that coincided with me having my second daughter, because clearly this is a really good thing to do when you just had a baby. Literally, I sort of was meant to get the first draft before Imogen was born. I ended up getting it the week after she was born. So we are talking newborn baby.
Wow.
So I decided to turn publishing it into my maternity project, because again, didn't have anything else to be doing at that time. So I spent my maternity leave going around schools and reading it in schools, setting up a Facebook page, getting it all published and sorted, going into shops and introducing it to shopkeepers, and so getting it into a few individual places, talking to people on social media, and doing all of that. And again, the response was really positive from people who I'm not related to, who do hurting my feelings. So the response was really, really positive, which was lovely.
Yeah.
The thing that I was really struck by was how many people. So it's really popular with parents of autistic children. I had someone who works in the foster agency get in touch saying, I really think that foster parents should have this, just in case, because they get children who can feel really isolated and really alone. And it's got a very positive message to it. Teachers like the anti-bullying aspect to the book. I've had loads of people ask me if my daughter was bullied, or if she suffers from low self-esteem or anxiety. And I'm there going, no, she's just spoiled. She's incredibly friendly, incredibly confident. Everybody is a friend waiting to be met.
Right.
It didn't suit her personality at all, this description. It is just a story that happened to evolve. So the reason why people think this is, of course, they think that Jasper is based on my children, or, they've asked me, was I bullied? Which again, no, I really wasn't.
Right.
So there's nothing autobiographical about it. It was just because she asked for a story about a dragon and a fire engine. But Jasper does go through a little bit of a hard time because he is unique. So that's the story behind how the story came. Now the story itself is about a water-breathing dragon who lives in a fictional town called Huff and Puff Valley. And this is a town where dragons and people live side by side, and they help each other. So the dragons use their fire-breathing skills in order to make life better for people. And when Jasper tries to do that, it doesn't work, because you can't light sparklers and bonfires with water.
Sure.
You can't roast stuff and have barbecues with water. Whenever you do that, it obviously puts out the fires. It means you can't have fire. It doesn't work. So they want him to basically leave them alone. They don't want him to hang out with them anymore. And so he does. He backs off, and he becomes really, really lonely, and doesn't have any friends. But then he finds a house that's on fire one day, and he decides to save it. So he breathes water all over it, and he puts out the fire before the fire engine even arrives. So the chief fire officer suddenly thinks, we could use someone like you on our fire brigade. And he invites him to the fire brigade. And that's when he realizes that he can do something. He's got a talent that nobody else has got because he's different. So suddenly the thing for which he was being left out and ignored for, so what was the bad thing in his life is actually suddenly made him really special. He discovers actually there's loads of things that he can do that nobody else can do because he's different, because he is the unique and only water-breathing dragon in Hufflepuff. As soon as his own self, as soon as he stops trying to be like everybody else and accepts that he's different and sees that as a positive, that is when his life completely turns around. So that's the story. I love that.
And you very kindly offered to actually read the story to us, haven't you?
Yes.
So, if you're ready to, I would love for you to read it to us.
Of course I will. In the mountains, in a place called Huff and Puff Valley, there was a town where dragons and people lived side by side. They played, worked, and talked together. The people of Huff and Puff Valley liked the dragons. In winter, the dragons blew fire to light sparklers and bonfires. In summer, the people threw ears of corn on the cob high into the air, and the dragons cooked them in bright yellow jets of flames. Yes, the people liked living with the dragons. But there was one dragon called Jasper, who wasn't very good at helping the people of Huff and Puff Valley, no matter how hard he tried. Jasper couldn't breathe fire like the other dragons. Whenever he tried, great big jets of water flew out of his mouth instead of fire. Jasper couldn't join in with the other dragons when they put on fireworks displays for the people. People liked the fireworks displays and would cheer when they saw the mixture of thin blue flames and balls of orange flames that rolled across the night sky. But when Jasper tried to join in, fire didn't come out of his mouth, and he ended up squirting water over the crowds. The people would go home cold and wet. When Jasper joined the people on camping trips, instead of lighting the campfires, Jasper sprayed the sticks and twigs with water when he blew on them. The dripping wet sticks and twigs wouldn't burn, and the people couldn't have campfires. No matter how hard he tried, Jasper could not breathe fire. Eventually, the other dragons and the people of Huff and Puff Valley got annoyed with Jasper. "He ruins everything," they complained. "Why can't he just leave us alone?" Jasper didn't want to upset anyone, so he stopped trying to help the people of Huff and Puff Valley and kept out of the way. He stopped playing with them, he stopped working with them, and eventually he even stopped talking with them. Jasper became very lonely and very sad. It wasn't his fault that he wasn't like the other dragons. No matter how hard he tried, Jasper didn't fit in. One day, Jasper was flying over Huff and Puff and Valley when he heard a voice crying out from far below. "Help! Help!" it cried. Jasper dived down towards the voice and spotted a house that was on fire. Taking the biggest breath that he could, Jasper flew right down to the house and covered it with as much water as he could muster. He squirted water into the upstairs windows. He sprayed water into the downstairs windows. He soaked the roof of the house with waves of water. Whoosh! He even sent a jet of water swooshing down the chimney. Within minutes, the house was dripping wet. Jasper had put out the fire and saved the house. He flew down to the ground, and the people in the house ran to Jasper and threw their arms around his neck. "Thank you, Jasper," they cheered. "You saved our home. We're so lucky to have a water-breathing dragon in Huff and Puff and Valley." Just then, the fire engine arrived at the house. The firefighters got out of the fire engine and looked at the smoking, wet house. "How did you put out the fire?" asked the chief fire officer. "I did it," said Jasper. "I flew over the house and covered it with water to put out the fire." "Extraordinary!" cried the chief fire officer. "We could use a dragon like you in our fire brigade. How would you like to become Jasper the fire-fighting dragon?" "Yes, please!" shouted Jasper in excitement. From that day on, Jasper the firefighting dragon had more friends than he could count. Everyone in Huff and Puff and Valley saw how important he was because he could breathe water instead of fire. In winter, Jasper drenched the town square with water, which froze to make an ice skating rink. In summer, Jasper blew water into paddling pools where the children loved to splash and play. And of course, whenever the fire brigade was needed, Jasper flew ahead of the fire engine and was first on the scene to start fighting the fire. Jasper the firefighting dragon stopped trying to be like the other dragons. He was happy that he'd found his own special way of helping the people of Huff and Puff and Valley. The end.
Oh, that was beautiful. What a lovely story.
Thank you.
And you made that up yourself. I love that. I really love that. It must feel very special to you, and obviously because you've written it for your daughter. And I love the fact that it's, you know, you weren't really actively trying to come up with a story that is now actually going to help people that maybe feel excluded. It'll help them think about, well, what are actually my special talents rather than what am I being shunned for, you know.
I really hope so. I've had some wonderful messages back from parents. One that really always stuck out in my mind for some reason was about this woman whose child was getting bullied because he was ginger. Oh. And you just think, really? I mean, I love redheads. I think it's gorgeous. But you think that is such a superficial thing. And so he really related to Jasper. Oddly, because Jasper, you will also notice, has got a little bit of orange on him.
Oh, yes. Oh.
Purple is because that was my daughter's favourite colour, so obviously. And purple and orange go well together, but I've been told that there is at least one redhead who feels that he's got a friend in Jasper because he's also ginger, just like him.
Oh, I love that.
I really do love how many parents have got in touch with me and told me these sorts of stories. And also occasionally when I've been into schools, and I'll often do a sort of Q&A after I've read the story, so I find out what questions children have got, and they come up with some great questions. The thing I genuinely find sort of over and over again, a theme that comes up, is I'm going to use the word outrage, because they just don't get it. They don't understand why he's excluded because he's different. Okay. It's all like this sort of knowledge block. It doesn't make sense to them. Which, I mean, we all know that children can be incredibly cruel, as we know from the little boy who was being bullied because of his hair colour.
Sure.
But I did like that idea but he's still Jasper and he's still nice and they should still be his friends. And I really like that they sort of highlighted that to them. It might be because it's a dragon that it's a bit distanced from people as to why they're able to see it so clearly.
Right.
Remember another child once asked, well, why is he different? Like, well, we don't know. He just is. Like, but why does he breathe water while all the others breathe fire? It's like, sometimes people are just born different. And that hadn't really occurred to this child, that sometimes people just are different for no specific reason. There wasn't anyone in that particular class who did have any disabilities. But again, hopefully, if they do meet someone later on in life, it might make it a bit easier to understand.
Fantastic. I love that. I think that's a really, really special message. So well done you for getting it out there.
Yes, and all the theme throughout all of them. So there's going to be a series of them.
Okay.
The theme throughout all of them is going to be about friendship. So the next one's out in a couple of months, which is Jasper the Dragon and the Fiery Sneeze. Elizabeth got a cold. She didn't feel well. So we made up a story about someone else having a cold. And it's one of the fire-breathing dragons who has the cold. And, well, you can guess what happens in it. But again, the main theme is about friendship, being there for people, and being there for them when they need them as well.
Wonderful. Oh, I love it. That's such a cool story, and I'm really glad that you got in touch, because it's nice to have. There's a completely different spin on the Be Glad movement, because it's the fictional character that's got some good coming out of bad and a reason to be glad. So I love that. Thank you so much for joining me and telling us and reading the story. It was lovely to hear you, because you read it beautifully. I'm sure you've read it a fair few times now. Lots of practice. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us, Val. If you like this video, please do hit the like and subscribe button. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook if you search for @BeGladMovement. And I'm pretty sure you probably won't have a story similar to this, but I always say at the end of videos, if you do have a story, please do get in touch. We'd love to hear from you, even if it is something similar to what's already been shared. We truly believe that your story and your voice could help someone in their time of need. So please do get in touch, and I will look forward to seeing you in another episode. Many thanks.